New from Horizon.
I guessed it. I was right. I'm going to emphasize that I was right.
Ish.
Well, I said it was going to be based on the new release was going to be based on the Baja Ray Rock Ray platform, which this exactly is. I was right. Anyways, this is the new Horizon Losi Hammer Ray.
It's hammer time.
Yeah, it's another one to be added into the entire Ray lineup. It's almost like it's like a Star Wars theme or something. So we put these up in some slides this time instead of a video, so we'll see how this works out. So I don't know, initial appearance wise, what do you think?
I guess it's pretty cool looking. I just don't like how it's extended on the back. I find with like my two-wheel drive, it gets hung up on a lot of stuff.
So a lot of emphasis was put on this one about it not being really a rock racer style setup. It's a U4 style setup. So the reason it's got so much length off the back end was because of the desert style running that it's meant to do.
Yeah, it's definitely like the real thing, right? But
well, I mean, if you take a look at the actual Chris Curry's actual truck and then compare the red and black one, I mean, they're so well done. They did a really good job on this one.
One thing they did miss was the grill on this one. I noticed that when they had the two side by side.
Yeah.
Chris Curry's got like the up and down bars in the grill.
So there's a reason why. You want to know the reason?
Oh, what's the reason?
So the reason for that is because this body that Horizon's put on is not licensed. Whereas Chris Curry's body is licensed by Jeep. This is not licensed, so they couldn't put the vertical slots in, put something else in. So I pretty much guarantee you some 3D printing company out there is going to make a grill insert that will fit in here to make it look like the Jeep like everybody wants, right?
Yeah.
I'm very impressed that they put LED lights in the actual headlights. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty big new thing now with all the brands putting in those little LED lights everywhere.
Right? Like everybody's got LEDs on the rear as well. That's the other nice thing. Like they're including it on the back because when your car is going away from you in the dark, it's nice to know what direction it's actually going sometimes.
Yeah, I know stuff from drag racing, right? Which way it's going.
Right. I noticed there's a lot of scale bits on the body that I think won't last very long. The little fire extinguisher up on top of the number 2 there, that'll be gone in no time. Like mine'll be gone in first rollover. It'll just explode off of there.
5 seconds.
It is very high compared to Baja Ray, but there are several differences on this platform. We'll get into a little bit more here. I just grabbed a whole bunch of pictures for this guy here. The scale stuff's really neat on it. If you're really worried about, I would run it without a spare on the back myself because I'm going to carry the spare in my pocket or in my toolbox. But for the scale realism look, yeah, the spare looked great. And you want to point out, and we'd already talked about this, that sway bar on the back end, it is like right out there. It's just hanging there. And so every time you're going to wheelie with that thing, you're going to end up scraping the hell out of the pivot joint on that. So I do think people are going to be losing those or wearing them right off and weakening them up. Not that it's a big concern, because that particular sway bar is more of a function and look piece than it is actual function because there's 2 sway bars on.
So I'm wondering, is there a rod that connects the two together, or are those just on there, just bolted in?
So I'm just going to go over here and look on my
schematics.
Schematic part.
Because now I look at this, I wonder if there's even a rod that goes through. There's just on there, like you said, for looks.
I think there is. I'm just going to find the picture and then I'll show you really quickly.
Everything.
Okay, so you got to bear in mind that these pictures are sideways.
Always ask all the interesting questions out of order, hey?
Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in on this and show you guys right now because you were right. It is not a functioning rear sway bar. And here's how I know how. Because there you get it. Get this zoomed in.
We're talking about why it has 2 sway bars, right?
Okay, you ready? And boom. Here we go. This is the sway bar where it's mounted on the back, and as you can see, it's held in with a very long bolt,
which also holds the cage together in the back.
So it is not a functional sway bar. So if you lose that sway bar, it means nothing to you except it's going to get caught in your wheels and dangle around and hit things. And it's all plastic though, so it's just
all for show.
So there you go. There's the answer to that question. It is not a functional sway bar on the back.
Nice. More scale detail, right?
That is one scale detail that is purely scale.
It kind of moves around, so it's like a moving scale part, which I think is kind of more interesting than just a scale part.
Than just a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Or the fake plastic oil coolers that they put on the top for your shocks and
Yeah.
such, right? So here's a cage view of it. Cage view of it, I think it looks like it's really tall.
Well, it's 11.11 inches tall, isn't it?
Yeah, let's get to the comparison. Functional spare on the rear. That seems to be a big deal nowadays.
Is that the exhaust scale detail on there? Go back.
Yes, it is. Magnaflow exhaust.
Magnaflow exhaust. A lot of detail in there.
There is quite a bit of it. Let's go all the way. Here we go. So this comparison of the three platforms that Horizon made in the Ray line. Now the Rock Ray is discontinued, gone. You cannot get it anymore. It was a pretty cool platform. It was brutal for ballooning tires. It was brutal for flipping over because the wheels were so tall that it would traction roll like now. But it was a lot more of a rock racer look to it, in my opinion. Then the Baja Ray has a whole lot of cage to it, but it's all lower than the cage is on this. Now, these three pictures are not to scale, just so you guys know. These were just what I could find that were similar, so you guys could look at them. And as you can see from where the figures sit on the Hammer Ray, which is the top picture, they sit quite a bit higher up than they do in the Baja Ray. Of course, there's a short course truck style, and then you've got your Rock Racer U4 style, which is what the Hammer Ray is based on, which is getting more and more popular seems like every month. It's getting more popular. So let's take a look. So there they are with the bodies. So both the Hammer Ray and the Rock Ray were open wheel concept, and the Baja Ray was your short course style with fenders and everything, which in my experience with the Baja Ray, because it's really quite a soft compound tire they used on there, those suckers would balloon out and they would hit those fenders and just shred that. Luckily, they were separate pieces. They weren't all one body. So like if you blew apart your front fenders, you just replaced the front piece. You didn't have to replace the whole thing.
That's always nice.
Which was kind of cool. So let's go here. There's your front end view. So the Hammer Ray is sharing front suspension parts with the Rock Ray. What it's not sharing is the shock tower. So if you notice on the front shocks, they're angled in more on the Hammer Ray, but they're using the A-arms out of the Rock Ray. They're also using pretty close to the same suspension spring rate, which reviews on the Baja Ray was that the preload they're very soft, and so a lot of people when they first got theirs, it would run and then it wouldn't want to return back up after the suspension kind of got worn in and broke in, and you had to crank up your preload and everything. So the Rock Ray used to actually have the top of the shocks attached to the frame parts, like their big shock hoops up at the top.
Yeah, I've seen that on the previous slide.
Right?
They're quite a bit longer too. There it is.
Yeah. It's still plastic body shocks, though. I wish they had gone with aluminum body shock. It's aluminum cap and plastic body.
Which is not too bad. Like I've had the Traxxas shocks in the past, and you change the cap out from plastic to metal, and it seems to solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. You also don't get as much binding and friction inside the plastic body shocks as you can with the aluminum bodies sometimes, depending on, like, if anything is slightly bent with an aluminum body, it's going to bind every time. If it's a plastic body, it'll usually give you a little bit of play, a little bit of freedom. So you can see with the tire size and design, it's a narrower, not as tall tire as the Rock Ray was, but it is still taller than the tires on the Baja, which we'll get to those in a second here. So there's another look at the front suspension. So what are they sharing in parts? The lower A-arms they share with the Rock Ray. The upper shock tower they kind of share with the Baja Ray, but it's not the same part. It's a different part number. And
similar.
As you can see, the Rock Ray shock tower, absolutely nothing even close to the same. So this is the comparison they do with the Baja Ray and this new Hammer Ray. Now, you and I were talking about this earlier. The differences between this and the Traxxas UDR are closer than the differences between the Baja Ray and this new one.
Yeah.
You talk about this. I'm going to find the UDR spec one here that we were talking about.
Yeah, we got here. Here's the tire height. I knew it was somewhere.
You found it. Okay.
5.6 right on here. That's where it is.
Where is it? Where is it?
On the very bottom line. Tire height.
Well, holy crap. Wow. Okay, never mind. I just need to learn to read.
Yeah, I knew it was on your slides.
I'm like, what? Where is it? Where did you see that? Oh, that's where you saw it. Okay.
You had it.
I had it right there. Okay, so Baja Ray. Now, this is overall length that they're talking about, okay? And they're not talking about wheelbase in this. This is overall length going from the front bumper to the back bumper. And then with the new Hammer Ray, it's from the front of the tires to the back fake wheelie bar, or the fake wheelie bar. The fake sway bar is, okay? So 21.6 inches as opposed to 26.5 inches. Height, huge difference. Right, that's a big difference when you're talking plastic cage.
Oh
right?
yeah, have a little more roll to it probably.
Even just looking at this picture right here, you take a look at the height of that spare tire and all that extra stuff. You're what, an inch taller, 2 inches taller almost on just your CG, your overall CG. So I think you're going to see a lot of more rollover issue with this, even with the longer chassis, because it's just going to be that much. But compared to the Traxxas, which I'll put up on the screen now, so this one is saying 26.5 inches overall length for the Hammer. Now the Traxxas is 27.32 overall. This is the UDR. UDR is considered to be more of a 1/7 scale, maybe. I don't know if you'd say 1/8, but I think most people kind of call it about more of a 1/7 scale. So as was, if you guys have watched any running videos on this guy yet, we don't have one, so I can't do a running video for you. I wish I did. But if you watch any of the running videos, a lot of people say like this thing, they're calling it a 1/10 scale, but it is way bigger than 1/10 scale really should be. So I think their scaling's off.
Again, scaling's definitely off.
Right.
But it all goes back to the racing scene and how they call, like the buggy I have 10th scale.
Yeah.
It's not 10th scale. Short course trucks, they're more 8th scale than they are 10th scale.
Absolutely. So let's take a look here at the width. The width is pretty even between these two. So you're 12.6, 12.4. So Baja Ray and the Hammer Ray are pretty close. Then we switch over to taking a look at a UDR. UDR is 13.5. So it is a fair amount wider. It's, a full inch wider. So there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And then if we look at actual height, 7.6 inches as opposed to 11.1 inches. And then we jump over to the UDR, which is now 10.29. So it's taller than the UDR, but not as wide.
So once again, more rollover.
Rollover king. Because the UDR is also on a short course style wheel, where it's got the larger diameter rim on the inside and the smaller diameter on the outside, right? Whereas this Hammer is on a 2.2 style. It's even on both sides.
All the way around.
All the way around.
More cushion.
So we've got that. This is more of a comparison off of Horizon with their actual cage design between the two. If you notice on the Baja Ray, there is a lot of drop down and hanging out the back.
Yeah.
Right? But there's not as much weight. When you take a look at Hammer, it's a lot more rigid and strong looking construction, not so flimsy, but there's a lot hanging back there. That thing's got a big ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Quick look at the chassis configuration now. On the far left is the Baja Ray. The middle is the Hammer Ray. And the far right is the Rock Ray when you're looking at the screen.
So the Hammer's way narrower chassis.
That one way over there. Farthest one away from us is the Rock Ray. So a couple things. You'll notice that it's longer wheelbase on the Hammer Ray and narrower. You can see where it goes right where the lower links mount, and then it tapers in right away and goes long and narrow and skinny. Battery compartment still fits the same style of batteries, so a 2S or a 3S battery pack.
I did see how they load it too. They load it like through the back.
Yeah. It's just like same thing with the UDR, right? The UDR, a lot of these platforms that have this style of suspension setup where it's independent on the front, solid axle on the rear. The UDR has the same. It's got a door where you pop it open, slide the batteries in. The Baja Ray and this Hammer Ray and the old Rock Ray used to have, they still have the pop-in door. There's a piece inside there so you can switch between 2S batteries or 3S batteries. Now, they've designed these based on batteries that they manufacture, so you're going to have to find something pretty close to being the same. There's a picture of how it inserts in the bottom. They still have the same setup for changing out the motor. where that bottom panel pops off, and you can access the motor and drop it out the bottom of the chassis, change your gear mesh, change your pinion, whatever you got to do, and slide it back in. That's all fine and dandy, works great. Fine and dandy, I haven't said that. That's all fine and dandy and works great, except for the fact that you got to deal with the wiring clipping in the way they've got it held in there. See if I can show a better picture of it. Where is that picture? Okay, so you see how the wiring is coming in. It's zip tied to the top of that upper chassis, and then it goes around and drops in. So when you try to pull your motor out, you've got to deal with that wiring still, which I remember on a rock ray, or not a rock ray, on a Baja ray, was a bit of a pain in the butt. A lot of guys would just basically put a really loose zip tie up there so you get more play, but still keep it out of the drive shaft, the main center drive shaft.
Yeah.
So that's a thought. This kind of gives you a bit of better picture of how it's laid out. There's all that junk in the trunk.
Oh, scale detail.
All that scale detail, right? Huge junk in the trunk.
Scale fuel tank in the back there too.
Right. These stoppers on here, these stoppers are not real, which is very disappointing. They are plastic, just more for looks as usual. And as you can see, there's no rubber stopper or anything. That would have been kind of cool if they were more functional. Right? A little spoosh. There's the front springs. Very soft, very soft.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back here. Where are we at? We're there. Okay, so comparing Rock Ray to Baja Ray to the new Hammer. Hammer's always on the top, just so you guys know. You could see the suspension, like the rear end setup is quite different between all of the Hammer Ray has this huge fuel tank, fuel cell looking thing, big spare tire, very tall, and it hangs out quite a bit further than the Baja Rays, which is wider, but thinner, narrower, lighter weight, not so much hanging off the tail end. And then when you looked at the Rock Ray, the old Rock Ray had nothing sticking out the back end.
Just the way it should be.
Just the way it should be, yeah. So, yeah, there's the biggest difference between those two. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, if I got a better picture here, there's a better picture. If you take a look at the shock towers on the rock, on the right is the Hammer Ray. Obviously, on the left is the Baja Ray. Now, the Baja Ray is running a single shock setup on the rear, whereas the new Hammer Ray has a dual shock setup, which is nice. It's going to give you that better action. But if you take a look at the size of that shock tower on the top, it's a lot beefier and meatier than the one that's on the Baja Ray is literally about the size of your finger. It's about that thick. Some others, but my finger, it's about that big. So I think you're gonna, it's like it's reinforced more, so it's gonna take that impact a little harder. I think that the Baja Ray it's kind of incorporated into the cage.
Yeah.
Right. So the cage does absorb some of it, but you get that flex kind of.
Well, also with that cage there, like if you break the cage, now you got a lot more flex than anything else.
Here's the rear axle. This is the biggest difference between the rear axle. Okay. The biggest difference between the rear axle here is that you have on the left-hand side is the Baja Ray. On the right-hand side is the new Hammer Ray. So the big tab that stuck off the back end for the fake sway bar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All for show.
All for show.
Not for go.
Not for go. Now I looked real closely at these universal joints while I was looking at this, because the one on the Baja Ray in their picture has a lot more shine to it than the one on right, which is new Hammer Ray.
Yeah.
Now, I thought, well, maybe that's because it's plastic. No, it is still a metal insert. It is still the same thing. It just it's not as shiny for the pictures. That's all. So it's still a metal universal joint in there.
Not as buffed up.
Not as buffed up. Here's the difference in the tires. As you can see, it's the same axle, basically. And on the Baja Ray, they have that short course style tire that's not going to balloon out as bad, but they still balloon out. They balloon out quite a bit, and they traction roll really bad. So you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get way more ballooning and a way more traction rolling going on out of that new Hammer, right? That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, now that you bring it up about traction rolling, that front end, you can change the camber in the front. If you take that link out, oh, there it is, top one. Mm-hmm. That's the Hammer. Mm-hmm. You could actually get an adjustable link in there.
Yeah, which is something you could not do with the Baja.
Yeah, you couldn't do the Baja or the Rock.
Right. So that's a good point. There will be more adjustability on this chassis.
So I say if you take that out, add some adjustment in there, might be able to eliminate some of that traction roll and be able to drive a little harder.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's get back to the slide I was on.
Sorry. had to talk
Where was
about
it? There, that one. Okay, that's what we're
racing
on.
stuff.
Now we're moving on to the next thing, which is part of what you're talking about. So these are the
Oh,
spindles, the front spindle. Now, because they've gone with the old Rock Ray style A-arms on the bottom and the upper link, and Baja Ray had an upper and lower A-arm setup where the ball was captured. There appears to be more turnability or more movement in the Baja Ray setup than there is in Hammer Ray setup. But the
for like
Hammer Ray
steering.
setup, like you said, is going to have adjustability by you could change out those for turnbuckles or whatever.
Yeah, I definitely do that.
Then I personally think that Hammer Ray's setup is going to be a lot stronger because it's not just a tiny ball captured in some plastic. So I think that the Baja Ray is going to still be weaker. If you take a look at the shocks on there, you can notice the spring. Usually when the spring is further apart, it's because it's a stiffer spring. If you notice that the spring on the Baja Ray, which is the blue one, it's quite far apart. So I think it's a stiffer spring. I
Yeah,
think this Hammer Ray has a ridiculously soft front suspension. I think you're going to find it bottoming out quite a bit. And then we are looking here. I just kind of gave you a bit of this is the side-by-side comparison of the schematics between the two front ends. So on the left is the Baja Ray setup. So as you can see, the bolt goes through a ball joint, which is captured by the upper A-arm, which then threads down into the plastic body of your spindle. Okay.
yeah,
Now, there's no way to keep that from coming out really. It's threaded at the very top of that. So if that gets broken or anything, your pin's coming out all the time.
yeah. That's what I hate
On,
about that style there because you screw it in. If you
yeah.
over tighten it, or if you over tighten it, it strips out. If you under tighten it, it works its way free.
Yeah. So you've got your Rock Ray one, not Rock Ray, your Hammer Ray.
Hammer time.
Your Hammer Ray one is set up the same, like your same kind of a lot of the parts are similar. Actually, none of them are similar. What am I saying? Anyways, back to what I was saying. You got a pin. It's a little pin that goes in. It's actually held in with the set screw from the bottom, from the side, basically. So you got to take the wheel off to get that set screw out. That can get lost easily too. If you over tighten that, you actually stretch out that hole on the top. Let me see if I can find you a better picture here so I can explain that one. There. Nope, that's not that one. Okay, so if we look in here and I get you the picture, scroll. Oh, why is PDF always so small? Okay, let's make this bigger. Okay, so I'm going to make this one bigger for you guys. And I'll put it, what I'm talking about, front and center. Okay, this guy. So this is the schematic straight off of the Hammer Ray manual. So if you're looking in here now, I can show you with the arrow because this is showing up right in here where this plastic piece is. I don't know if you guys can see my arrow. Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
So right here, if you over tighten this screw or you put one in here that is too long, what happens is when you tighten up against this, it sits into this little groove here.
Yeah.
This little groove is supposed to lock this in place from sliding in and out. It will, if you tighten that up too much, you stretch this plastic, weaken this plastic. If you put the wrong size screw in there and you over tighten it. And
Yeah.
that
Well,
happens a
even
lot.
if you over tighten it, all it has to do is hold it in there. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
it's just
tight. Just
stopping
put
it
the pin.
from popping out. It's not actually a structural piece that has it. It's a
Yeah.
lock screw.
So
So a
don't
lot
over
of
tighten that
people
one.
would tighten that up too much, which would cause that to break. So that's going to be a problem. You're going to see a lot of people do that.
One thing
The
I noticed in here that because I have Losi race cars is that in between those two bearings in the front, in the race cars, they put a little shim in there in
right here,
between those two. That way
right
you
here,
can't. In between the two bearings.
right.
So one thing they're
Yep.
missing here is that little shim goes in between. So when you tighten it down to the bearing,
Mm-hmm.
it tightens it down perfectly. So you can't put the side pressure on the bearing and crush them out.
Okay. And here's the other thing I don't like about this setup, and I wish they had changed it in this redesign. If you notice right here, okay, there's a hole here.
Yeah.
The hole here is not a pass through. You got a pin here, pin here. I would have preferred to see that a solid pin going through there, like a solid hardened steel shaft go through there that was captured on both ends, like a nut on one end and not on the other. I know what this does is it changes the height and everything, but for strength and durability wise, I would have preferred to see it being a solid because I think that there's really not a lot of meat here on the end of this to be digging in here and capturing strength.
Yeah, I might get a little flex in there and
I
pop
think you're
out.
gonna, yeah.
Maybe.
That's my opinion, but so then if we go up here, we can take a look. Also, the biggest difference here, show it here with this one on the Baja Ray, which is on the left. We have the old universal joint, solid axle, all one piece, goes up to a dog bone style that's captured in an outdrive cup. On the new Hammer Ray, you have a universal joint with a replaceable plastic drive shaft piece in the middle, okay, that is a slip joint, then going out to another universal on the other end. Now they're captured in with a bolt. So let's go back to this one here so I can show you. So they're captured in here with this bolt, which comes in. These things, if you don't Loctite in here, this bolt, they're plagued for coming undone, and you lose your piece, and you lose your screw, and you lose your drive shaft, and things break. But at least with that plastic, I think you're going to get a bit of give. You're going to get a little bit of freedom. It's not going to be so jarring on the drive line when you land with the throttle on real hard or whatever, right? Because the front wheels on this thing are going to spin quite a bit. Remember, this is wheelie action time. This is where you get your ballooning action happening on the top front.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that because if you think about the mass of the shaft and how it twists, you got the little metal shaft. You're twisting that metal. You're flexing that metal.
Right.
Whereas you got something bigger, rounder, like those tubes, and now you're flexing that, and it's kind of bigger, right?
Yeah.
Versus this. This.
You get more torque. You should get more torque out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get back over here to...
You won't bend the shafts. I think that would be a thing there with, you like you said, you got wheeling up, you hit the ground, and just have that stop, right? You spin so fast and you stop, that's going to be bent.
So then we get over to what they changed in their steering. So if you take a look at this with the steering, I'll go back. This picture here is probably the easiest one to show you. In the middle is the hammer ray. On the left-hand side is the Baja ray. Now, as you can tell, the Baja ray, the servo is mounted basically with the splines pointed down, and then your servo arm went on the bottom. I can speak from experience with that particular chassis and the cage and everything on there. If you burn out your servo, it is a pain in the ass to change. Because you got to take a whole bunch of the cage, and it's just a pain in the butt. So now the hammer ray, they've laid the servo down, so it's running flat with the chassis, and it's closer down to the chassis now. There's no more flex. The Baja ray, it was raised. It was almost 3/4 of an inch plastic riser off of there to hold the servo up, so you had for your linkage to go. So you got a lot of slop and stuff in there in time. A lot of people didn't get it right away. Picture I can show you. Not, eh?
Probably not. I didn't see that one on the slide.
Well, okay, so you can see how it's a lay down in here.
Yeah.
Right, and it's right flat to the chassis pretty much.
So it probably has 2 screws on each side. You can unbolt those and shake it out. Oh, there you go. Yeah, 5 screws.
Yeah, there's this one here. You kind of see it, right? And then you see how the servo arm and everything is up at the front. It's all just flatter, more compact, mounted to the chassis, lower to the chassis, and just going to be easier, less flex, way less flex. Now, if you go all the way down back to so many slides. There we go. So this is the new, they say, improved steering. Now, the only thing that I'm seeing any different are the plastic parts at the very top of that. You'll see you've got your 231008, right? That's different. That's now 245017. So it's like all the plastic pieces have been changed, because in typical fashion, when you order steering parts, it doesn't come each individual part. It comes as the kit of parts. Yeah. So I think really the only reason you're seeing a different part number here is because that one arm is longer. In the very, very top arm, the bell crank arm at the top. So you've got your bell crank, then your ball joint. Ball joint goes to your, what do you want to call that? Turnbuckle? Steering rack? Turnbuckle. It's not really a turnbuckle, but the link that links to your servo is longer. That's the only thing I see different in here. I'm not seeing a difference in springs. Spring number is the same. The servo saver part is the same, except for the fact that it's just a different number. But like I said, I think picture-wise, they look exactly the same. So I'd really be interested to see what they changed by pulling one apart. I don't think there's going to be that much difference. I know the Baja ray had a really, you could turn it on, you could grab the front end, and you could move the wheels because there was that much slop in the steering, in the actual steering mechanism. So
I see.
Yeah, so that's my take on the sucker. I think it's a really cool looking car, but I don't think it's really 1/10 scale.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit bigger.
Right? I don't think it's 1/10 scale. I think it's bigger. I think it's a lot closer to being the UDR killer that a lot of people coined it as. Right? When they first announced this potential release, and then Losi said, no, it's a 1/10 scale platform, but it's actually not. So
no, it's more like the almost like the Rift size.
Yeah, there's another one, right? Like they call that a 1/10 when it's closer to being a 1/8. Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Scale in RC nowadays, unless you're like into the uber scale stuff where they're like super scale details and crawlers and stuff like that. But if you're not doing it for super scale realism, you got to have that, what it used to call it with Traxxas, used to call it the phantasmic scale.
Phantasmic scale.
Phantasmic scale. I still laugh at their Traxxas Summit and the Traxxas Revo. One is a 1/8 scale and one is a 1/10 scale.
Both same chassis. Everything.
So
the only thing I would change on there, I would take those scale brake calipers off, and that would be it.
You take the scale brake calipers off?
Yeah.
Why?
I just see that getting full of dirt and stuff.
Yes, and grinding.
Yeah. And then, you get a rock in there, it bends it, and then it's really dragging. It's cool to look at, but those things, I think, take away from the function.
And on the Traxxas UDR side, I know that a lot of people that were running those plastic hexes, they stripped really easy. I don't know if these are going to strip as easy. These are only 12 mil.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a strong possibility these are going to strip easier.
But with those new wheels that came out, they got the 12 or the 14, or what is it called? 17 mil hex adapters for everything now. Now, would that be that's probably what I would do. I'd probably put like a 17 mil hex on there, put the bigger, these big ass wheels on there because they're big. And then I would upgrade the servo and motor ESC combo.
So look at this here real quick. Okay, so you can actually, what you're talking about here, you can take the entire hex, you could take that whole rotor and caliper thing right out of this one entirely and just leave the hex. So you might be able to change that up to a 17 mil hex easier than you can on a UDR. The UDR has a different setup. Let's see if I throw a picture.
Yeah, that'd be something I would do because if you're going to go after the UDR killer thing, the one thing I think is lacking is a little bit on the power side.
So UDR is a 17 mil gallery picture chassis. Let's go with this. Yeah. So when you get into this one, and this is a picture of the UDR, your hex is a solid one piece combined with that rotor piece. It's not separate on this.
Also, it goes roundy.
Goes roundy, but I'm pretty sure that this is actually 17 mil. I have to double check that. I think it's 17 mil. Yeah, UDR's got the dual shocks all the way around as well.
2 spare tires.
Let's throw even more weight back there. So comparison-wise, I don't know.
I think a lot of people are going to like the Hammer because it's not Traxxas. There's a lot of anti-Traxxas people out there. So it's like, I kind of like the UDR, but I kind of don't want to buy it because it's Traxxas.
Yeah, I don't want to buy into, some people really don't want to buy into, it's like Apple. You don't want to buy an Apple phone because you buy into that whole ecosystem. Or Traxxas, you don't want to buy a Traxxas because you buy into that whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
Now that's a really valid, good point because I don't know if I can show you this on the Traxxas. Let's get there. I'll find it. All right, okay, here's a picture of a Traxxas. Just so we're talking about the spindles, that's what they look like, right? So and then I'll show you. I'm going to try and find this. And the Traxxas does have aluminum body shocks as well. Another bonus.
But then again, you're looking at the price difference as well.
There's a good large. Well, yeah, no, not really. No. We're $7 Canadian price, okay? Give me a break here, you guys. Canucks. Let me find the price point.
$579 or something like that, American.
So retail for this new Hammer
time.
Map pricing in American dollars is $579.99. That's what is on Horizon's website. Okay, if you guys want to argue about the pricing, that is what is on their site right now. And then just over to American dollars. You guys don't just
$7.99.
Change this to UR site A. Okay, there you go. Now if I go to the UDR pricing, it is $7.99.
Yeah,
for the UDR.
$250 more, over $200, $230 or something like that.
What are you getting with the UDR though that you're not getting with this?
Light bars.
Are you getting more light bars? Because everybody wants more light bars. You're getting dual shocks all the way around.
Aluminum body
shocks. You're getting a 6S combo, a 6S capable motor system as opposed to, but it's still 6. It's still rated for 6S. As opposed to a 3S only, you're getting that extra $200 pretty much.
Yeah,
and I think you're actually going to get more stability out of it just because of its design. But okay, back to what I was trying to find you guys before I started.
Went down that hole.
Went down that rabbit. We're trying to find a picture of the bottom of this thing. See
the all plastic.
No, I'm trying to show the battery hookup is a Traxxas ID connection that plugs into the chassis.
Yeah, I hate that.
Okay, that is exactly the same on this. So if we go on here, let me show you this picture. Boom, 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 boom.
It's entrapment.
Right? You are buying into the IC5 realm of things now with this new hammer ray and this platform.
So the hammer ray's got the same thing where you got to plug it in?
Yep. It's built into the chassis. I'm just trying to find a picture of it here to show you. I don't have any good pictures on that site, but I know it's basically the same.
1 second.
I know there's a picture behind somewhere. Here, let's look at this one. Go to this. Let me make this. No, not good enough. Can't show you that one yet. That won't. There it is.
Show me the connections.
Okay, so let me show you here. So the difference between the Traxxas one and to the right spot. Okay, here, this is the new hammer. The new hammer has this, as you can see, it comes out of the ESC. The wires go across the top, and they're going down into this harness, which is fastened into the chassis, so that now you just plug it in from below. A couple things that happen with this that are a real pain in the butt. One, you hit a hard enough landing, you slap that chassis, the plug comes undone. People say, no, that doesn't happen. Yes, it does. Because I've been there, I've seen it happen. But could, on this one, you can change it out. You can see it's two screws holding it in from the top. You can change it out. You could modify it and make it work into a different style of plug. If I remember correctly, with the Traxxas one, I don't think you can do that because I think that the shape of the housing is actually designed to be the same as a plug.
I think it's molded right into the chassis pretty much, isn't it?
I think it is.
I remember looking at one at the store there, and I was like, you know what? It's horrible. Horrible. I'm just waiting for the companies to, all do this. 5mm bullets.
You want to know the reason why they'll never do that?
Because people are dumb and plugging them backwards?
Yep. That's exactly the reason. It's not idiot-proof enough. And there's too many meatheads out there that'll be like, big battery. Oh, no, battery on fire. Oh, house on fire.
I'm going to sue. Yeah.
Like, where are my RC friends? Where are my RC friends?
Yeah, true.
Right?
Sad.
No.
Oh, yeah. But that's when you get the reverse polarity ESCs in there, which are available.
So anyways, that's shit.
I think it's kind of cool.
I like it. Do I like it more than the Traxxas UDR? I like the Traxxas UDR as well. Do I like it more than the Baja Ray? I'm not sure. I like the Baja Ray because it is smaller. I like the smaller. I don't like gigantic RCs. I like 8th scale, 10th scale. That's my what I've grown up with. It's what I've used the most. It's the genre that has been around the longest for me in the 35 years I've been doing this. That's been the most common scale to me.